Hi everyone, welcome to Cole's Hobbies. In this video, I'm going to be creating this diorama of a truck driving through old swampy ruins using a Hot Wheels toy. I'm starting with the base, which is a 4.5 by 10 inch piece of insulation foam board. This stuff is very cheap and you can find it in most hardware stores. I marked where the tires would sit on the foam, then I used a file to carve out the tracks that the truck had left behind. I then cut away parts of the foam to give the ground a more natural appearance. I gave it a light sanding to smooth out all the rough parts. To create all the hills and lumps, I used air dry clay. That wasn't sticking very well, so I used a knife to cut grooves into the surface, giving it a rougher texture to grip onto. Next, I started making the stone pillars and walls. I started by cutting the shape of the bricks into the foam. To make it look old and ruined, I cut out little pieces of the foam. Then I used a dull pencil to make all the lines wider. Doing this was really satisfying. I rolled up foil into a ball and pressed that into the sides to make it look more like stone. Here is what it looked like with and without that step. I made more of these along with some individual bricks. I glued them all on using hot glue. After that, I went scavenging in my backyard and I found these things to use on the diorama. I drilled some holes in the clay, then superglued the trees down. I used the sticks that I found as logs, and the pieces of bark were going to serve as rocks. Once all those were glued on, I gave the entire scene a generous coating of spackling putty. This filled in all the gaps and cracks and made it look more like real terrain. I then coated everything in a layer of Mod Podge, which sealed it and got it ready for painting. When that had dried, it was time to start painting, and I first gave the ground a couple coats of brown paint. After that, I gave it a black wash to darken all the recesses and give it more depth. I then dry brushed the entire thing with light brown, which highlights all the raised areas and makes it look a lot more realistic. Then I gave all the stone ruins a gray base coat. After that, I covered them in a black wash, then a light gray dry brush. I painted all the sticks, logs, and rocks, then I washed and dry brushed them. After the light brown dry brush, I painted on some green to add the appearance of moss. After that, I applied some glue to the ground and sprinkled on some static grass. I flipped it over and tapped on it a couple times to remove all the extra grass, but this also makes all the grass stand up on its end and not lay flat against the glue. I then hot glued moss onto the trees to act as leaves. Next, I mixed up a batch of resin with a little bit of brown paint and poured that onto the diorama. I realized that it was too opaque, so I tried to remove most of it, then I made a new batch of resin that was less opaque. I waited a few minutes for the air bubbles to rise to the top of the resin, then I used a lighter to pop all of them. After that, it was time to move on to painting the truck. First, I cleaned all the dust off the truck, then I dry brushed the wheels with brown paint to make them look dirty. All the gray parts still looked like plastic, so I painted them silver to give them the appearance of metal. I used a brown wash to darken all the grooves and to add spots of dirt and grime. I then glued the wheels in place so the truck would not try to drive away once I had it on the diorama. After that, I gave it a dusty brown dry brush on the entire thing. Then I glued chunks of moss onto the truck to make it look like it had actually been driving through a swamp. Then comes the fun part of painting all the sides black. Next, I glued the truck down to the diorama. After I had done that, I attached cotton to the back of the truck to act as smoke coming from the exhaust. I used clear coat to add a little bit of texture to the surface of the resin. Then I painted ripples on the surface of the resin that the truck had just driven through. And finally, it was finished. Thanks for watching until the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions for me, leave them in the comments below. I hope to catch you in the next video. See you later.